Let me ask you a question. Do you ever find yourself unsure of what's going to happen when you apply for a credit, loan, or a mortgage? What about aiming for a loan amount only to find out that you got a fraction of what you're aiming for? Doesn't that frustrate you? And the worst part of all that is that you're probably wondering what went wrong and how you could have fixed it to make sure that you got close to what you're asking for. Well, in today's video, I'll give you a complete breakdown of your credit score, the biggest single indicator of how well you'll perform in underwriting. But that's not all. I'll break down each element of your score so that you can better evaluate the areas that you can potentially work on to improve your odds of approval. And my hopes is that by the end of this video, you'll be able to confidently understand each area of your credit and be able to develop a game plan to fix, enhance, and improve it. So stick around. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Ali Tarafter back with a new video. If you're interested in fixing, leveling up your credit, and building wealth, then consider subscribing to this channel. I post regular videos to help you understand credit and can help you take control of it. We all know how important it is to make sure that we get approved whenever we decide to apply for loans, mortgages, and even perhaps credit cards. And if you look at the current state of the economy, with families evaluating their alternatives, planning for the worst, and being unsure of what moves to make next, understanding your credit score is probably going to be one of the most important things that you'll need to focus on. However, at times, it may seem like you're trying to solve a massive puzzle. And with so many different options and factors to work around, navigating your credit space seems complicated. But don't get discouraged. Let's dive in to see how we can break each of these influencing factors down so you can understand your score and make it simple for you to be able to understand each of those factors easily. More specifically, we'll be going over 5 key ingredients that comprise of your overall score. One thing I'd like to point out before we begin is that the evaluation is based on the FICO score. See, many people get confused with the terms credit and FICO. In simple terms, each model is designed to give you a close measurement of a risk score based on the 5 factors that we'll be talking about today. However, over 80% of lending institutions and banks prefer to use the widely applicable FICO model. So for our conversation today, we'll be sticking to that as well. Let's start by order of priority. For the sake of simplicity and ease of understanding, we'll go first with the factors that provide the most influence when evaluating your score and work towards those that are least yet important influential factors. On the top of our list, we have the payment history. This is the single biggest factor that influences your overall FICO score. To be exact, it's about 35% of your FICO score. This is typically determined based on how well you performed with your existing creditors. Your payment behavior heavily influences underwriting systems, because that's how they evaluate your risk level. Simply put, the more late payments you have, the less likely that you'll get approved. When you look at your credit reports, you'll be introduced to something called a 24-month payment grid. This is usually at the bottom of each of the account summary. Generally, the payment grid shows the breakdown of 24 months of payment information with all of the 3 major credit reporting agencies. To better understand the payment grid, there are several components that we'll need to study. First, in most credit reporting services such as Identity IQ, Credit Check Total, or even the reports coming directly from the 3 bureaus themselves, you'll be able to understand how well you perform based on the color codes. With these boxes checked in the color green, this usually indicates that the payments are respected and have been on time. As they start changing colors, say yellow for example, it indicates that there are issues, and typically they can range from anywhere between 30 to 60 days late. When they are red, you're moving more towards a 90 days payment, and that's a late schedule. And finally, when they are color-coded as black, the account is typically charged off. And by this stage, the account are typically written off the creditor's books and would fall into the hands of a debt collector. So it's important to understand that at times you might not have color codes to help, but in these situations, you'll need to work with payment grid based on a series of numbers and letters. First, you'll see the words OK, which indicate that you've been respecting the payments and are on time. If you're 30 days late, you'll see the number 30. Assuming you're 60 days late, the number 60 will appear on the box. And if you're 90 days late, the number 90 will appear on the box. If you've charged off status, for example, like similar to before, but you'll see the letter CO. And again, what you will see generally will depend on the credit reporting service you're using. But with the information you have, you should be able to determine where you stand in terms of your payment history. Moving on to the next most influential factor for your credit score, and that's the amount that you owe. This is the calculation between how much limit you have access to versus the amount that you currently owe on all of your creditors combined. This is referred to as a utilization ratio. So the factor actually comprises of 30% of your credit score, so it's important that you understand how this works. In order to calculate your utilization ratio, just put together the sum of all the revolving credit that you have. And remember, only revolving accounts counts towards the utilization ratio. So next, you want to calculate the total balances that you're carrying with all your revolving accounts only. So for this example, and to keep it simple, let's assume that you have a total of 3 credit cards. And let's assume that the total limit given to you from all these 3 credit cards was a combined $10,000. From that, let's assume that you have a balance on all 3 of those cards that add up to a total of $4,500. Based on these numbers, your utilization ratio is 45%. Since the balance of $4,500 is 45% of the available $10,000 limit. One thing to note is that ideally you want to have at most a ratio of 30% utilization. The reason why is because most of the lenders and underwriting systems prefer to see a low utilization ratio when extending you credit. And hence, from the example that we've just gone through, you'd want to hover around the balance of $3,000 to make it 30%. Next, let's look at the length of your credit history. This factor influences your credit score by 15%. To understand your credit history, it all starts with your oldest account. Generally, you'll be able to find it at the beginning of your credit reports. At times, they will come at the end of your credit report. The older your credit history, the better. Now, a rule of thumb I'd like to give is to have at least 5 to 7 years of established history, and in most cases, for those watching this, including yourself, this shouldn't be a complicated milestone. However, I understand that at times, due to the negative effects of your credit and the accounts that you have over time, they may not attribute towards helping you influencing your score positively. So a neat, cool little trick I'd like to say is that you can actually calculate the average of all your accounts combined, which will give you an estimate or an idea of how to evaluate the median age of your credit. This actually leads us to our 4th factor, the amount of new credit that you've established. The factor actually contributes 10% of your overall credit score, and generally speaking, you want to establish new accounts on a regular basis. So for most of you, this stage can get complicated, especially if you've got bad credit to start. However, there are creditors out there that offer decent credit limits and easy approvals. Now, there's a list of them I've included below at the description of this video, so feel free to check those out. Now, one thing to note is that you're going to start applying to new creditors, you're actually going to be accumulating a series of inquiries. So as this happens, your credit is going to take a gradual hit over time by every single inquiry that you put up. So it's important that you strategically spread out your new account application so it doesn't affect you on a severe level. This leads us to our 5th and final factor, the diversity of your credit profile. Now, this term is also known as the credit mix. This actually counts towards 10% of your credit score. So credit mix simply means how diverse your credit profile is. Do you have installment loans, car loans, perhaps other financial products that are not only credit cards? And thankfully, the vendors that I've listed in the description of this video will help you get started with a great mix of different vendors and creditors and different types of accounts. So it's important to note that some of these vendors will require an application fee. So when you get started with them, understand that principle. And there you have it, the 5 elements that comprise of your credit score and what to look out for when you're thinking about establishing credit. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, don't forget to subscribe and turn that bell icon on so every time there's a video like this, you'll be first to be notified. Feel free to share this video if you found value in it, and leave me a comment below on what are some of the elements that you're going to start working on in order to fix and improve your credit. With that said, this is your guide and mentor, Ari After. See you guys next time. Bye for now.